Thanks so much. How's everybody doing today? Everybody good? Everybody alive? Thank you. Really excited about our panel here. We've got some really diverse folks from big brands, new brands into the metaverse and technology. So we're going to talk about all things metaverse today, which I know everybody wants to know what is the metaverse, right? Well, that's what we do on a daily basis at AdMix. We actually we are the gateway for brands into the metaverse. We help them identify where the best place is to be in the metaverse, help build them, and help activate and extend that relationship with their consumers through activations in the metaverse. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about the metaverse and how everybody's looking at it and how to avoid shiny objects, which I'm going to start with Kate, and I know Roxanne I'll get to too, but Kate, I'm sure you probably get a few things every once in a while across your email about shiny new objects. How does Pepsi really take that approach to really evaluate those opportunities so that you don't go down that rabbit hole of like, hey, let's go do this and let's go do that? Tell us a little bit about that process if you could.
Of course. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Kate Brady here. So I lead media innovation and partnership development across PepsiCo globally. It's an amazing job where a large part of my focus is doing just that, is helping identify what's new, what's next, and what will be the best way for us to connect with our consumers. And so a little earlier today, so hopefully this isn't a repeat to some of you, but I did speak about the PepsiCo Labs program, which is a process or a program that we have instituted that helps us identify common challenges across the organization. We work with the startup community to then find startups that can help solve those business challenges. We do rapid pilots and then scale those successes. So, the metaverse is actually what our focus is for 2022 right now. We're hoping to identify areas across all elements of it, whether that's from an NFT space, from the crypto blockchain space, from experiences, or the future of work. And so we are, very involved in right now working with those different communities to help identify how we can potentially play in space.
And it's a complicated space. There's a lot of shiny objects right now in the metaverse. So I'm sure it's a lot to go through, but I think you bring up a really good point is there's not one way to enter the metaverse. And I'll educate everybody just a little bit. There are two different types of the metaverse. If everybody may or may not know, there's a centralized Web 2 and Web 3. Web 2, if you think of it, is like Meta, Fortnite, Roblox. It's all centralized. Decentralized, Decentraland, Sandbox, Somnum Space. Those are more peer-to-peer. Web 2 and centralized is controlled by the corporations, whereas Web 3 is more so controlled by the community and what the community is looking to achieve, and it's peer-to-peer, so everybody participates when land and the experiences grow in value. But so along those lines, we're going to talk a little bit to Brett. Launch House, really sort of a physical world between Soho House and WeWork. Talk to us a little bit about how you're bringing that into the metaverse and the experience that your community will see in that new experience.
Yeah, so it's kind of a strange discussion because 100% of our business right now is IRL. That's our brand. We put a bunch of founders, other types of people in a mansion in Beverly Hills, California, a real physical place for a month, and that's our product right now. And we're taking it to the metaverse for a number of reasons. Number one is that it actually unlocks access to more diverse types of people. So this is a kind of an important thing about metaverse is it's actually not this exclusive, thing that only like geeks and dorks really like right now. It actually means that people who have families, people who have disabilities, people who are from different parts of the world can participate in the programs that we run, which are, really important for some of those people. So really the main reason why we're excited about it is to basically unlock that kind of diversity for our community.
Fantastic. Roxanne, we've heard a little bit about how to evaluate how Pepsi's looking from just a shiny object perspective, but from a B2B standpoint, from a work standpoint, from a standpoint from Clinique, like what is the metaverse? How do you define it internally, and what do you think of it, and how you're describing it to your peers and selling it up, selling it to senior management?
Yeah, absolutely. And hi everyone, I'm Roxanne. I'm the Vice President of Global Consumer Engagement. If you are not feeling your skin today, you want our latest color of pop red, the Clinique team is right here, so just meet them after. we've had so many discussions about getting into the metaverse, right? We launched a few months ago with our first NFT. The way that we look at it, and the definitions changing all the time, is I think we're finally happy that this idea of ownership is really coming to the fore. When we think about all of the work that we do with consumer engagement, the idea that you have to log into a platform, give up a whole lot of your information just to consume content, the fact that that world can change now and you can own and we can empower communities directly is really interesting to us. And so when we think about defining the metaverse and how it's going to be exciting to Clinique in the future, it's this idea and this notion of communities. We launched our first NFT a few months ago, and a big part of what we did was we did not want to sell our NFT. We didn't assign a value to it. What we said is we're going to give it to the community, let them decide the value of it. If they want to sell it, if they want to trade it, let them own a piece of Clinique, and let's see how we can empower them. I think that's the journey that we're going to continue to be on when we think about the metaverse.
Thank you, Roxanne. So I think that you bring up a good point, and as we look at the metaverse right now, it's not huge. Listen, it's not a reach and scale opportunity right now. It's call a spade, right? You're not going there, get a big audience, but it's an opportunity to test and learn. A year from now, 2 years from now, as a brand, you don't want to be stuck like doing one thing when everybody's over here. So instead of making a huge commitment to one area of the metaverse, you really need to take this opportunity to figure out what works for your audience, to be authentic. And if you're not authentic to your brand and to also the community in which you as a brand are entering, it's not going to go well, but you could make mistakes. It's okay. You need to learn what works and resonates. And, I think, Brandon, one of the things that we were talking about was like, from a technology standpoint, blockchain, what's like the one thing that you're finding when working with brands that's the biggest challenge in terms of what they understand about how it works?
Yeah, my name is Brady Rodriguez. I'm the head of growth for a company called Reach. And Reach is a development platform. So if we take a step back and we think about the metaverse, we're the bricks, if you will, to build anything that would be in blockchain. So whether it's NFTs or coins or distributed platforms, it's built safer, faster, and reach. And one of the things that we're learning about is how difficult it is to just conceptualize decentralization. And what does that mean for traditional companies and brands and business models, as well as understanding the underlying technology and what are those ramifications of it. It's really easy to hear buzzwords or to hear NFT and feel like you have to go check a box and say, other brands are doing it and we need to go do it too because we're doing that thing. But fundamentally, one of the things that we kind of laugh about is like, we say NFT, 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 but how many people really know what those letters stand for? What is the N? What is the T? What is the P? What does it mean to be fungible? Right? I think a lot of people fundamentally don't know what fungibility is even about. And so it's easy to then make these mistakes when you're experimenting, when the group responsible for executing them also is far removed from the technology, not understanding it. So there is an impetus or a responsibility to your users to take the time to learn the underlying technology, understand what it means, before jumping in so that you can check a mark and say, our brand has an NFT, we're like every other brand, right? And that's where you miss, right? That's where you look like you're trying too hard. That's where it looks, inconsistent with your brand message and exposure. And so we encourage companies to take that step back, consider what it is and why it is they want to do that. If there is an actual value add to your user by issuing an NFT because they are building a community or because they get access, or you've identified a utility to that NFT that becomes valuable, go for it. But if you're just doing it to check a box, likely you won't see the ROI, likely you'll shy away from investing in the metaverse in the future. We talked about this week, when you test something, that becomes your data point. And if you test an NFT and it fails miserably because you didn't understand how it all worked, when that next data point comes into the metaverse, you're going to likely have a hard time wanting to reinvest or retouch because we already dipped our toe in and it didn't work. Why didn't it work? A controlled study would say maybe because we misunderstood or misaligned. And so that's really what we aim to do, is help companies understand, how do I build and what am I building with what purpose?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I add to that? I just want to say, if there might be a notion as well that users aren't there, or you may not see the numbers. We always talk about this internally, right? To us, This is kind of the early days of social media. Consumers were there and brands were still catching up. I mean, there are 2.5 billion people in the metaverse, 7.8 billion in the real world. That's not a small number. They're pretty evenly spread around the world. If you think about any Western social media platform today and look at the numbers on, say, a platform like Roblox, users on Roblox are spending 3 times more time on that platform than on social media. So I think if we're, and I agree that it's new. I think the volume of transactions isn't there yet, but I think the consumers are there. When we first did our venture into the NFT space, and you're totally right, like the next one may fail, but at least our first step into it, we saw 60% lifts in search and engagement with the brand, 20% lifts in social media. We saw our loyalty database go up by 15%. All of that could just be interest, but to see that there's real numbers behind doing it right in the space, I think it's encouraging for anyone that's trying to get in there.
Well, and measurement is one of the questions I get asked all the time, and I say, let me stop you right there. There is no measurement right now. I mean, it's so nascent. We're still redefining it. But so I think that kind of to play off of what you just said, Roxanne, and what you said, Brandon, and that is, you need to understand what your objectives are. What are the outcomes you're desiring first and foremost, and build the technology towards that, and then learn how to measure it. How do you want to measure it? Like, are these the key points that we want to find out? Are we driving there? And then you can be able to identify where it is and then what's resonating with your audience. And that's why it's testing and learning, because you could go do something and find out that it did great, but why? To your point. So Kate, along those lines, how is Pepsi? You have so many different brands, and we talked about this earlier. So many brands that it's so important to be authentic, right? You've got a lot of really unique brands along those lines. So how is Pepsi taking the overall approach? And then for each individual brand, how do you look at it and bring them into the fold?
Yeah, so I think particularly to what Brandon was talking about educating our internal community, I think that's the foundation of what we're working through right now. Is we've got a team that is immersing ourselves in every aspect of this space, meeting with as many people as we can to learn as much as we can about it, and to be there as it's evolving so that we can have a really informed point of view on the right way for us to approach each brand. And because you mentioned we have over 200 brands across our global portfolio. I mean, they're
super easy.
Super easy. So it's just, one-stop shop playbook easy, right? So we're going to figure out the right value that we can bring to these communities, because it really should be community first of how we're approaching everything. And so how does Mountain Dew play in the space? It's going to be very different than how does Life Water play in the space versus how Cap'n Crunch is going to play. So all of those are going to have very unique views and positions and value that they're going to bring to these different communities as we evolve, as the space evolves. But I also think that I love that right now we're getting in it while it's so nascent. We're figuring out what are the right approaches, trying to put a number of different irons in the fire right now to see what's really working so that once things do really take off, that we can be ready to hit the ground running. Because like you said, there's a ton of people in Roblox, but Roblox I don't think is what the nirvana view of what the metaverse is.
No, it's a different audience than what Web3 is completely.
And I think it's a stepping stone to what will be. So I think those Roblox audiences are probably going to migrate to a sandbox or a central end eventually as they grow with the capabilities. And so how do we help grow with them and really make sure that PepsiCo, as we see our brands as the center of pop culture for a number of different occasions, like how do we stay there and how do we continue to build brand advocacy and brand love with these communities as the space evolves?
And it's the metaverse is about community building, right? And it's about authenticity. I know everybody over the past couple of days and at any conference, everybody talks about authenticity. But I think in Web3, it's really, really important because you will get called out really fast. And that's one of the things that we talk about is like brands are no longer advertising to consumers. They're inviting them in to experience something that's unique, to surprise and delight that you're not going to get in a different medium. So, that's kind of the way that when we talk about it. And so I'm going to go back to you, Brett. I know that you've identified some certain areas of entry points for you. I mean, like how have you avoided those shiny objects as you've looked to enter the space? I know it's in a different, environment, but I mean, it's all important. There's so many different ways to get into the metaverse. So how have you taken that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to comment really quickly on that last point about the metaverse being about collaboration. It's really like Web3, the fundamental shift in marketing and brand building is it's all about collaboration. It's no longer about building some sort of piece of content on your own in your office cubicle somewhere away from your users and customers. It's really about not only just inviting them in to check out some cool stuff, it's about inviting them in to co-create. Right? This is what you're seeing in Web3. This is what you're seeing the best community builders and marketers doing in the world right now. They are co-creating and co-building. And so to answer your second point, that's kind of what we're doing right now with Launch House. So again, we have this physical experience. Everybody loves it. Then they go home and they're away and they want to participate and hang out, with each other again as if they were in this physical experience. And so a community member suggested we would use this metaverse platform called Gather, which is not one that anybody really talks about in this type of context, but Sequoia Capital.
I hadn't heard of it before we talked.
Sequoia Capital invested $50 million in the platform. They're growing like crazy. And arguably, it's the most functional metaverse platform out there. It's two-dimensional. It looks like a Pokemon Game Boy game. But what's special about it is it's designed for businesses and corporations. It's digital workspace, and it actually works for having meetings, having events. They've been blowing up in the conference circuit. And so really the way I think about metaverse is it's digital land. It needs to do something. Nobody's buying land in Greenland right now because the land in Greenland doesn't do anything.
Let's not get political.
Yeah, the settlers came to America. They love the land because you can get these furs. Oh, dang, all these furs. There's gold in California. This land does stuff. And so it's different about Gather for us, and we were evaluating Decentraland, the other ones, at least right now, is that it has a functionality. It does something, so if you're if you want to.
It was an easy lift for you guys. You didn't have to really build too much more. You could customize it more to what the experience was that you wanted, right?
Yeah. And the idea is okay, fast forward, the metaverse is a thing, and everybody's setting up their digital offices, right? We're talking a lot about digital storefronts, but they're setting up their digital offices. So small teams are gonna have the same problem that they have in the real world, which is, hey, you wanna co-work with cool people, but you don't want to set up a giant office. It's too expensive and lonely. So we're essentially building the equivalent or experimenting, co-creating with our community. We work for the metaverse. So it's basically a co-working space designed for tech workers to come together and build together.
Great, thanks so much. Brandon, what have you been seeing? I mean, you're talking to a lot of clients. I mean, from a technology standpoint, what are you seeing that's working within, NFTs when you're talking to clients and brands? From a technology standpoint, outside of the internal education, when you actually deploy and you find success, or clients are finding success, what are you seeing that's working?
I'll actually take a step back from that and say, I don't think we know the answer yet.
I would agree with you.
I was going to say, and so I think fundamentally there are some underlying vocabulary things that have to happen, right? So when we talk about Web3 versus the metaverse, for example, Web3 is the underlying infrastructure on which the metaverse could be built. But Web3 also has a lot of space for other things, right? It has space for loyalty programs. It has space for, conversion or for transferring funds. There are a lot of use cases outside of that. And so as you're thinking about as a brand what Web3 means to you, it doesn't necessarily mean three-dimensional virtual spaces only. There is a whole, space for all of our current business models to transition to decentralization. So understanding what decentralization is and means and what that means to the user experience, what that means to your business model, all of those kind of precede this idea of virtual experiences and creating a 3D experience and what that means and where that's going to be, because there's no winner yet. And it's not even fully clear that we're all going to sit at home in our goggles and never leave our house, right? That's not, potentially
I hope
not the future, right? So trying to make that bet into say, this is what it's going to be, this is what it's going to look like, this is where I'm going to place my bet as a brand, it's probably not safe, right? You want to diversify that bet across technologies, platforms, and abilities, and understanding what that possibility could be is what's going to win. And that's what we're seeing is the investment in understanding the technology, the investment in placing bets and participating in these different types of communities and these different iterations of Web3, including the metaverse, understanding that NFTs aren't about the art sucks for the most part. We're all very well aware that these are pixelated pictures, but I saw somebody walking with a Mutant Ape Club sweatshirt on. And I know that the Mutant Ape Club is an actual social group of people who reach out to each other, who connect with each other, who help each other, who have parties. It's about access and exposure and partnership. And it's true community building, not in the way that we've talked about it for a long time, but in an actual way where there's actual connection and actual interaction. And that has a higher level of responsibility from the brand in making that community be authentic and making that community actually give value rather than just be something you slap on like a logo at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I mean, I think you're 100% right in terms of, like there's smart contracts. So from a loyalty standpoint, you can follow your consumers as they go around and you can give them exclusive access to certain aspects that you want them to and drive them to. And, Roxanne, we were talking and so much about, the way that Clinique looks at it in terms of your digital and social strategy. How are you playing into that from a metaverse standpoint, from social, and what does it really mean from your digital strategy?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, it's definitely a consideration whenever we do anything now. We may not enter all the time, but as we're thinking about the brand, as we're thinking about our product strategy, of course, this is something that we think about. I think going back to what you said, it's really hard to say this is exactly what we're going to do and here's how we're going to launch it. But I think what's inspiring us is to make sure that our mission stays true no matter what our strategy is. So for Clinique, our mission is to be in the service of all skin. We want to do it with optimism and bravery. And if we get to own even a part of that in the metaverse and to lead the way into that, to us, that's a massive win. So that's always top of mind for us, to make sure that our mission and our goal stays true. And then finding the right moment to implement it into your digital social strategy. I think that's something we're going to continue to think about. It's about when the moment is right, when it feels authentic to us as a brand, and it's the right moment to do it versus entering just to enter. So something that we're constantly thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's aim small, miss small, and to your point, Brandon, there's going to be winners and losers, and you don't know who that's going to be. So as a brand, that's so important in terms of your brand equity. You have to be able to commit and figure out what's going to work and what's not. So, Kate, as you look to the future of digital media, we talked a little bit about your daughters and so forth, but like, where do you see, media going? Obviously, the metaverse is a broad term, but it's this whole new channel. And we talked a little bit about measurement. I wasn't joking when I said, it's literally an open game right now. But as I said, how often do we all have the opportunity in our careers to put our fingerprint on the next iteration of the internet? So how is it that when you're, with Pepsi, where do you view the future of the metaverse and digital strategy?
I mean, we are a little bullish that this is the future, and we have to figure it out, and we have to be there as it evolves. And I think, we talk about when you look back 10 years and people questioning just general social media, and then you look 10 years before that, people questioning just the internet. I imagine that 10 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, can you believe that people didn't understand this and didn't really grasp what could be? So it's exciting to be a part of this revolution that I think is going to take hold over the next few years. I think it is going to take a few years to get to any level of what we see being wrote, but we're not going to be in the oasis like on Ready Player One and anytime in the near future. But I do think that there's a path to start getting there, and to be able to help shape how PepsiCo builds their approach in that space is such a massive opportunity that I'm so thrilled to be a part of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really unique, and the interoperability between different meta worlds will come.
Yeah.
But as we talk about, we're in 1996. You just bought Pepsi.com. Now, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to put on it? How are you going to get people there? How are you going to keep them engaged? That's literally where we are right now. The ad tech and everything else that we know, the other channels that drive traffic, while we're really far ahead because of where ad tech is, it's going to scale so much faster, but we're still very early on.
So we have time for a couple questions.
A couple questions, sir. We're getting
So if you have a question, raise your hand. While you're thinking of your questions, maybe I'll throw it out. You guys keep thinking. Scott Galloway said a couple weeks ago, I love this comment. Facebook's metaverse strategy is going to fail because it doesn't believe people will put anything on their face that decreases their chance of having sex.
So that always seems to come back for him. Isn't that why you just started the Facebook?
So while you think of your questions, when you come on, raise your hand. Maybe go a quick round on what do you think the next near-term future is of the goggles or wearing some sort of into the metaverse?
So number one, whatever Scott Galloway says, you have to invest the opposite. It's the reverse Galloway index. Anybody, any investors out there? I used to actually work on the AR team at Google. And the reason I left AR is because I was bearish on the amount of progress that was being made in the space. And actually the biggest observation is that like people don't want to feel weird. Right, Google Glass wasn't a huge success because everybody who wore it was like the biggest dork in the room. Works in San Francisco, doesn't work in Austin, Texas. Doesn't work, you know, you go.
Doesn't work most anywhere.
Doesn't work most anywhere else, right? So I think the biggest thing I realized the reason AR wasn't going to work is probably similar to why Metaverse is going to take a while. Is that like people don't want to hold up their phone to like look at stuff very often. You know, it's not a behavior that happens very often. So I don't know. I think it'll take a while.
Fantastic. Oh, we have a question.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for this. It's so interesting to hear so many different perspectives. I think hearing what you're saying, you're cautioning on don't rush in, but rushing, but don't rush in, but rushing. How do we avoid the drag that so many brands had in terms of allocating funds away from TV, away from print, snapping up on social, snapping up on YouTube? It took so long to get brands on those platforms. And I think you guys are wavering between the two. How do we not do this again?
I'll steal from Ricky Bobby. If you're not first, you're last. So if you're not out in front of the crowd, you're me too in a lot of ways. And so if you're not prepared to be first, my advisement is to be right. So to do it correctly, take the time, learn and do it correctly, or be the first one out the gate and make it loud and make it successful that way. Because otherwise you're stuck in the middle and mediocrity. And that rarely is a good strategy. So, you know, there is speed, but there is also that taking the time and making it done, make sure it's done right.
And just building on that, I would say, you know, running an innovation program in a pretty massive organization, for us, it's really critical to have senior sponsorship of that innovation work and making sure that we're ring fencing dollars that aren't getting pulled, that we can continually innovate, but it's not going in guns blazing with everything. It's starting small and trying these smaller things to do these rapid sprints to understand what's working, what's not, and then iterate and evolve and continue to build and grow on that and scale those successes and then put things on the back burner that aren't working or that might need more time to foster and grow. And so for us, it's that constant innovation, constant test and learn so that we really can evolve as the space evolves.
And to add to that, it's such a good question. I think you have to think about where your next generation of users are or will be. And if you're not testing into that space now, like you said, you're really left behind. If you think about, let's say, more traditional forms of media today, like social media, right, which is, you know, somewhat traditional now in that sense. Think about your next competitor and how big they are and how many years it's going to take you to catch up if you weren't in there in the early days. And I'd say that holds true with the metaverse. If your next generation of users could be there, and if you have a chance to start small and to test and to learn, if you're not doing it, I think it's an opportunity that's wasted.
We have time for one more quick question. Anybody?
Oh, one in the back.
Of course, they're always in the back.
Hi there. Yeah, when I think of the metaverse, I think of it synonymous with like AI and artificial intelligence. What are your path roadmaps when it comes to voice AI or the use of avatars and digital assistants?
I'm happy to start that one with you guys because we're a beauty company, right? The way you show up in the real world is as important as the way you show up in the virtual world. And just going back again to our mission, if we want to be in the service of all skin to make you feel optimistic and brave every day when you step out, that holds true in the metaverse as well. The rise of avatars and this idea of avatar economy, the increasing way that consumers are starting to choose how they want to be represented that day is really incredible. We have a partner who's in the room. We've been chatting with them a few times. until yesterday, when we met them for the first time, nobody knew what they looked like. Every time we met them over Zoom, they showed up as a mutant ape, something else. I mean, the fact that you can choose your identity and how you're feeling that day is really incredible. But it's also really empowering. I don't need to show up as an Indian woman. I can show up as whoever I want. And if we think about the biases that are there in the real world and how we can potentially remove them, I think it's so empowering. It's really interesting for us as a beauty company to be able to start to explore that new world that's out there.
I think from a brand perspective, you know, we talk about AI or machine learning, we talk about avatars, we talk about virtual worlds, and we really are talking about this kind of digitalization of all of the aspects of our life. So I think the opportunity is in zagging, if you will, and then being considerate of the human element and what that means in this new kind of in this new age, right? What does it mean to identity when your identity can be changed in a click? And what does it mean to yourself or to reality or to personality? And what are those elements where you can anchor your brand in the humanistic parts of this? Because automation is coming, virtualization is coming. So what are those still human, experiential, basic instincts that you can connect to when it comes to the marketing? These are the principles that underlie, regardless of the channel, regardless if it's a billboard or a television ad or a metaverse experience, making sure that you don't lose that, because it's so easy to get caught up in the technology, shiny objects, and really do what you do best as brand marketers and bring it back to that emotional tie.
Yeah, that's a really great way to end it. But I just want to say one last thing is that, like, one of the best things you could do is find people who are really, really tapped in and in the know and collab with them. Don't try to do it on your own because you're going to wind up being inauthentic, doing the wrong thing. You're going to mint something on Bitcoin somehow. And, like, you know, people, you're going to be like, hey, we love Bitcoin. And then you realize, oh shit, everybody's on Solana now, or everybody's on this other thing. And like, oh, the Gen Zers, like, you know, our audience is Gen Z, but like we're doing the wrong chain. That's like, so definitely figure out what your goals are as a brand, and then go and find startups to work with. Go and find agencies that help, like reach, that help people do that.
Thank you guys very much. As you can see, standing room only. Clearly, this is the topic people are. Thanks everyone, and thanks for the great panel.